You have been very kind. Thank you very much. It's time to participate. It's time to take your part in the dialogue. So, first of all, we can start. Let's say that. Wow. Let's say that we have some more minutes. You have understood that I'm not very structured, but I couldn't stop any of them. I would evaluate that as something very negative. So if any of you, I'm sorry, yes, now I can see. So if any of you would like to open the discussion or with a question or a proposal or some criticism or whatever, we are all ears now. You have. Yes. So I would like to ask everyone who would like to talk to first present herself or himself.
Καλησπέρα. Αγαπητέ κύριε Σπανέ, θα ήθελα να μεταφράζετε αν είναι εύκολο.
I'll try to do my best.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Ευχαριστώ. Λέγομαι Μαλακός Χρήστος, είμαι κάτοικος εδώ του νησιού. Θα ήθελα έτσι δύο σκέψεις να καταθέσω. Καταρχήν, συμφωνώ, ευχαριστούμε για όλη αυτή την εκδήλωση. Όλα αυτά τα οποία ακούστηκαν ήταν πάρα πολύ ενδιαφέροντα και πραγματικά αληθινά. Thank you everybody. Anything was very interesting and right. Θα ήθελα να προσθέσω σε αυτό που είπε ο κύριος Πιλάνης ότι όντως, και είναι αληθινό, the Greeks that came from the East Minor were not so friendly, welcomed. It was true. But many Greeks came here from the East Minor as us. Our parents were born there, and now we know that. And I think our behavior to the refugees is different. Okay, now we have that in our mind, in our soul, and I think most of the people had different behavior about to the refugees. But I think, because I have spoken a lot with friends in my job and everywhere here in the city, mainly in the first years, I mean 2015, the people had a fear, not that because not for the things that were happening that moment, but for the future. I mean, I asked my friends that had a very bad opinion about the refugees. Okay, what is your problem? Tell me, please, what is your problem? Your everyday job and everyday behavior is the same. Nothing changed. You have your job, you have your family, you have your money, you have anything. You're eating, you come in your job, go back in your house. What is your problem? Okay, there are a lot of people that are suffering here. Okay, what is your problem? It was nothing. It was, I think, the fear that all that refugees will be more and more and more, and it happened. And nobody trusts. We love Turkey, we love Turkish people, but we don't trust them. We don't trust their politicians. We don't trust them. And this is, I think, the fear that the refugees will be more and more is something that make sometimes our behavior to be bad to the refugees. And generally, I think the people are friendly. I have to say a lot about the people in Lesbos, but okay, it's enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Waiting for our next contributor. One of the most important challenges is generalizations. I mean, speaking about all the refugees, about all the locals, about all the NGOs, about all this or that. Yes? Maria, please.
My name is Maria. I'm from Germany, from University of Siegen. And I would like to ask you, Effie, because I don't know the family name, I forgot it. I was really, yeah, your speak made me think because yeah, you said something that like academics they drop in and they leave again, and so I guess science, or especially we as researchers or going to be researchers in my case, doing refugee studies, should also rethink more about what we are doing and how to how to treat the subjects we are studying, and how to bring back what we find out. And I would like to know from you, it's maybe a very broad or general question, but what would you expect academics to do in this situation? What can academics bring in?
Sorry, but we have a light in our eyes and we try to. Um, Look, I mentioned this because working in the field for most of us is emotionally, we involved a lot emotionally, which is not necessarily good, but this is how things goes. You are there, you try to do your best, what you can, what you think that is the right thing, and then it's very difficult to understand in one point. And what are these people that are researching and studying? What are they doing? And there was in one moment I was very angry with everybody almost. But on the other hand, taking us, you see that there were hundreds, thousands coming. We were experiencing this every day, many times. In one point, you start to differentiate. You try to make it, to put it in another base. So you try to understand what these people want and what is useful according to your conception. You don't know, you don't have the answers, and at the end of the day, because it's very complicated, it's very personal. This, okay, it's my perspective. I ended up looking for some ethical codes, some moral issues that the people are coming here and they respect, they try to understand. They are also open to what is happening. They are a bit affected of what is happening and not coming to get and go. And there are different things that you are expecting, but generally it's a code of ethics for me, and respect for, and also the outcome, what is going to happen after this. And the truth is that the main, my anger started from the local university. I was shouting for years since, I mean, I'm involved since 2006, 7. Where is the university? What is the university is doing? There's a huge community. What practically, what we change here that we are. And then when the crisis happened in 2015, the university also started to have some projects, okay. I'm not against this. I'm just looking for some connection to the outcome, some respect of the human pain, because and also some respect of the people who are involved. That we are not like there to look at us, and we are not there because we are suffering. It's not the best way. I'm not saying that we do it very well. Okay, we are suffering, but we are suffering too. And we are getting angry when people coming to get from us.
If I may say something, Maria, the problem is that we academics have the tendency of living in our own world, which means a lot of academics come here, do some research, and then they publish papers only for other academics. So what? So what? I mean, the problem we have is communicating the results of our research to those people who are supposed to be the subjects or the objects of our research. So the problem we have at universities is exactly a kind of understanding that our research has to do some change in practice. I mean, that's the problem.
Hi, my name is Vasilis Sofiadidis, and congratulations on an unbelievable initiative and a much needed initiative. Charting the current situation. So currently, we've got people on Sub-4 Square on the one hand, and they're protesting peacefully, as any other person would, given the challenges that they are facing. They are stuck here. They're not allowed to work. People are not allowed to work. They don't know what they're going to be doing. And so what they've done is gone to the cold and sat there waiting, saying, we're looking for a solution. So that's the one component. That's from the refugees' perspective. And so they are protesting as peacefully as possible. On the other hand, you've got the local population that's had a lack of opportunity to get to know refugees, as Jalal has pointed out, that their town square, where they come together to go and have a cup of coffee, they're feeling unsafe to go into their own place. A few weeks ago, when the national holiday, starting from Sub-4 Square, we got full of refugees standing there, which makes the local people completely uncomfortable. In their own town square, they don't feel safe to go with their children. In some of the parks, there are people drinking there and so on. So you've got people there that aren't, don't feel comfortable in their own home. So from charting the current situation, and also all the organizations that spoke, everyone spoke perfectly, but as Effie said, who's taking the responsibility? And so my question is, as charting the current situation, given that it's a couple of 100 meters away from here, who can answer on how we take the next steps to ensure that what's happening at Sub-4 is handled, I guess, in the best way? And what would that way? I'd like, someone to propose some type of suggestions on what we could do on that.
Hello? It's not. Hello? My name is Edmond, and I'm from Cameroon. I have two questions to ask here today. My question, I want to know the difference between a vulnerable person and a refugee. Because what I see in Moria, vulnerable people are considered more as a refugee than others. And the proof is there that the vulnerable people, they have their interview at the Greek asylum office, that is GAS. And those who are non-vulnerable, they have their interview at IAZU. And 90% of those who have the luck to have their asylum are from the Greek asylum office. And so far as when you are non-vulnerable, your case is forgotten on this island. So that is why I want to know the difference between a vulnerable and a refugee. And the second question is that all of us know here that in all the organizations, the offices concerning asylum, UNHCR, the lawyers for Metadasi, IAZO, and all the rest, their staff, they are not enough to take care of the case of refugee on this island. And that is why they keep giving result randomly. They don't take care to study the decision of refugee very well. So what can we do about that? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Those are two comments or questions I'd actually like to address Vasilis. I remember, I'm just going to short experience. I remember that we had something similar, totally different place in Scalas Camias. There was an area called Platanos, which is kind of like the park. And when he first started working with refugees, having a soup kitchen there, what we got very quickly, I mean, literally from the time we set up a soup kitchen there, is that people said, wait a minute, you're taking over our park. And so it's kind of a parallel thing, that what was the place they'd like to go on a walk to in the evening, even though there were thousands of refugees, it suddenly was taken over. And so I made the decision that we would move farther down the beach. And then as soon as we left, another group took over, and we had the same problem. But I don't know what the solution is, but I think, again, communication is very important, even to the refugees, because I said this again and again and again to volunteers, like, please, when it comes to parking, when it comes to driving your car, please always clean up after yourself, and suddenly the locals feel respected. And for example, in this particular case, it was a holiday the other day. You know, if somebody actually said to the refugees, hey, holiday's coming up tomorrow, can we move to the side for one day just because it will make things easier? So I think it's communication and local knowledge. Again, somebody who's actually willing to go, hey, like, we're actually trying to help you by respecting the locals, because suddenly the locals can get behind them. And when the locals, even, when we moved away from that place, even though a couple days later somebody else took over, they were like, thank you for moving. And suddenly, us working farther down the beach, we got a lot more respect and help from the locals just because of that. So communication and local knowledge. So that's just my thought. Sorry. I can't.
Okay.
Sorry, but for this question, I understand that, I have been very few times in Sapu Square, and because it's a very limited, it's a small group that is protesting, for me, the protest it should be more generalized. Shouldn't be a national group or a small group protesting. It should be, is a big problem. What is happening we have a big problem to deal with, and it should be more united, the groups. And so I don't know much about this protest, but I feel that what is happening in Moria is the problem, and the violation of rights of the people there. So this small picture there, I respect a lot the local population and their concerns, but I think we have to realize that there is a huge violation of rights in Moria, and we cannot blame be threatened by a few people that they came for any reason in the middle of the town to make it visible. This should be visible, and this should be dealt by the authorities in a proper way. And about the vulnerability, in my opinion, the EU-Turkey deal is a disaster in terms of human rights and asylum, because practically there is no asylum right. Okay, it's violated, finished. It's only vulnerability, and then we have the problem, who is assessing and who gets the vulnerability, and then you are lucky if you have one leg, you have cancer, you're dying, you lost your family, all this, which is unacceptable anyway.
Boris, yes, of course you may, but I would like to ask Katya if she has a comment.
Yes, thank you very much. I do. I think very much of the discussion that has been today, as far as I have been able to follow it, it is about finding local solutions to problems which are basically created on the global level and on the EU level. So it is actually a really difficult struggle, because it is impossible to find local solutions which are a result of really unfair structures about how to react to very difficult challenges. And in a sense, I think this is both challenging the systems of rights, which I think are being sort of suspended in such situations, and putting people, both local people and others, in a very difficult ethical situations as well. And in our project, we interviewed police officers who have been working in Frontex. And I know that Frontex has a very sort of a tarnished reputation, but some of them were very reflected. And one of them said that he's wondering sometimes what his children will think about him when they think about his role in this situation. And he compared it to the Second World War, and he said, well, will they think about it as we were thinking about people who were working under Nazism, cooperating with the Nazi regime? And I think it's the difficulty of sort of really putting on people in the situations where they feel that they are it's impossible to sort of be ethical and respect the normal ethical rules and moral obligations that we feel to other human beings. And I think sort of finding local solutions really is good, but I think we as an academics can also try to influence, or should try to influence, the structures which are creating these very difficult pressures, and try to influence the policymakers in Brussels or in other European capitals to try to change the structures, try to be more solidaric particularly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katja. What is peace?
Hey. Right, where to start? So many things that I'd like to address. Maybe, first of all, with a grain of salt, take a lot of the criticism on behalf of the organization. Some of it is quite well-founded, but maybe start with the principal question, which, Effie, you posed first. Who has the responsibility? I think that in order to understand the current present situation and not necessarily talk about policy, not necessarily talk about the legal reasons why the situation in the hotspots, not only in Moria, but also on Chios, in Vial, and on Samos, in Vati, why we've come to this point. Let's first start with who is tasked to respond and coordinate the response to the refugee situation in Greece. That is the Greek government. It is the central government of Greece. That is essentially the Ministry of Migration Policy. They have the principal role to coordinate the response. They are the managers of the hotspots. Inside the hotspots, there are national services, the Reception and Identification Service and the Greek Asylum Service. Both are part of the Ministry of Migration Policy. And Keltno, who are the medical coordinators on behalf of the Ministry of Health. These are the main principal agencies that are tasked with the management of the hotspots. If you look at why we've come to the point where 200 arrivals on the peak days, and there have been only a few this year that have come to Lesbos in that number, as opposed to 10,000 or what was it, 12,600 and I think 70 on the 25th of August 2015. So this year we have fewer people for the whole of the year so far coming to Lesbos, just about 10,080 I think today. Fewer than one single day in 2015. And yes, it's an ongoing situation, the flow continues. But even 2014, we had more arrivals than we have right now. If you step outside of Moria, if you go beyond the olive grove, just outside the walls of Moria, you're not going to feel that there's an emergency crisis situation. If you step outside of the hotspots on any of the islands that have hotspots, there are 5, you're not going to feel that this is an emergency. It isn't a quasi-emergency inside Moria. It's a very pressing, immediate situation. There are hundreds of families with young children, pregnant women that have complications because they've given birth, but the hospital has only so much capacity that they need to release them back to a tent within the, let's say, 6 hours since they've delivered with their infant baby. It's absurd. It is extremely unhygienic. There are no water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities that can care for the size of this group of people. The principal reason why we've come to the point where 200 people or 100 people or 50 people or no people a day contribute to the situation is because the population stays in one place. But I will come to your question, which was a very valid question. Who's more a refugee than another? But give me a second, bear with me for a moment. At the end of May, there were 1,900 people in Moria. That's within the capacity of the site. The vast majority of these people were single men, mostly coming from countries that don't necessarily and don't usually produce refugees. That's not to say that some, if not many, of those people are not refugees. Being recognized as a refugee by the Greek state or any other state doesn't make you a refugee. The circumstances which led to your flight is what makes you a refugee. But there's an official process, the asylum process. Greece has invested substantial efforts to create the Greek Asylum Service 4 years ago, and they've come to a place where they're receiving 50,000 asylum applications in a year, last year in 2016, and this year as well, and they're almost able to process that number. That's incredible. And I think that the head of the Greek Asylum Service recently said that per capita, there's no other country in the world that can handle this amount of asylum applications, and that's probably true. But not everyone can succeed in their asylum application. There are standards, there's criteria that are very specific. Some people will be rejected. Once that happens, they can appeal. However, in the appeal stage, we have a fixed number of appeals committees, 13 at the present moment, that have a very limited mandate and a very limited number of cases that they can resolve and decide on. That creates a bottleneck. If you're on appeal, it is very likely that you will spend months on end, if not over a year, which is the case for some people in the hotspots, including in Moria, and you will stay in that site without the opportunity to move. Those that now are being allowed to move and have been allowed for the last year and some months, since June 2016, about 16,000 people have been able to move from the islands to the mainland because they have cleared the border procedures. The border procedures are a new set of standards that apply after the EU-Turkey statement, which came into effect on the 20th of March 2016. If you are allowed to move, and if you're vulnerable, if you fall within 8 categories of vulnerabilities by Greek law, it's within the law. If you're a pregnant woman, if you're a lactating mother, if you're a single-headed family, if you're elderly, if you have a mental or physical disability, if you're an unaccompanied child, if you're a victim of trafficking, if you're a survivor of rape or torture, you can go to the mainland and continue the asylum procedures there. If you're not, and you still have not completed the border procedures, you will have to stay on the island. This creates a bottleneck. When people are not allowed to move for extended periods of time, sometimes for over a year, that's clearly unreasonable. So the geographical restriction that was imposed following the border procedures that were adopted after the 20th of March, the EU-Turkey statement, they need to be considered because they are contributing to this situation. Now, What is UNHCR's place and role in all of this? Because this comes up time and again. It definitely comes up at times of crisis. UNHCR did not, it came on Lesbos Island as a matter of operation at the end of August, very late August 2015. We've had someone on Lesbos doing monitoring for 7 years, so we didn't just arrive then, but it is when we started our operation, and it didn't really pick up until end of September. So you're very right, and if it wasn't for the volunteers, not only in those initial stages, and I do mean the local community volunteers, then the international volunteers that came, it would have been a disaster far worse than it was. And it was a disastrous situation. It was chaos. It wasn't because UNHCR or international NGOs came in that the situation improved. The real glue, the help, the support was from the volunteers, and this continues probably to this day to some degree in some locations, definitely. Thankfully, we were able for a short time, between November, I would say, 2015 and 20th of March 2016, we were all working together. Volunteers, small NGOs, grassroots organizations, bigger organizations, what capacity existed within the state and national institutions. We were working together. The system then somewhat changed. But I digress. We've been in the country for 70 years, basically, since 1952. 60 some years, 65. F in algebra. We had a representational role, mostly working to help the government improve its capacity to deliver quality asylum. And in 2015, we were asked, because UNHCR can only step in if we are asked, we were asked at the end of the summer by the Greek government and the European Union to launch an operation, the first of its kind in the European Union. It created turmoil within the organization because we're meant to go into Sudan. We're meant to go into Bangladesh although our role there is, for anyone who's interested, I can tell you, we're not responsible for the coordination, which probably we should be, but that's a completely different matter. We go where there's an urgent, immediate need, and the government cannot step in. In Greece, despite the number of people that were coming, and I'm sorry this is running very long, but I think it's important that these issues are addressed. Despite the number of people coming, there was and continues to be a stable government. This is an EU member state that has the opportunity to benefit and has benefited quite substantially, in fact, from resources provided by the European Commission, both in terms of funds, but also in terms of expertise. And that's a message definitely for me. Okay, so I'll keep this very short. Our role in Moria and in the hotspots is to do protection monitoring and to help provide information. That's it. It's not up to us to improve the shelter. It's not up to us to improve and upgrade the infrastructure. It's not up to us to go and identify the vulnerable individuals. If we have some capacity to help and we're asked to help, then we definitely will. But our role was to help at that immediate point in time in 2015 and early 2016 when it was a critical emergency situation. We stopped applying emergency measures at the end of 2016. We don't have neither the funds nor the mandate to help with winter preparedness in Moria. Despite that, because we have some stock left over from the emergency period of tents, blankets, sleeping bags, hygiene items, winter kits, we're making all this available to the government until our stocks are depleted. We've shifted some resources on HIOS so that we can help with some of the expansion of the Vial hotspot. Yes, stage 2 at Scala is a site that falls within our competency, and if there are issues there, then definitely we need to resolve them or help resolve them. And you and I will speak after this, I'm sure. Refugees are refugees. There should never be discrimination where people are coming from, what gender they are. However, within a group of displaced people, there are specific needs that need to be addressed for those that are most vulnerable. At the present moment, you might be seeing more people leaving Moria. Same for Vathi on Samos. This is due to something called, by the Ministry of Migration Policy, the one-off exercise. The one-off exercise is an attempt to ease the overcrowding of some 6,000 people in a place for less than 2,000, which is the case for Moria, with an increased rate of transfers. That means that the Greek Asylum Service and KELPNO, which is the medical coordinator, and the Reception and Identification Service are coming together to lift geographical restrictions for those that they can find as vulnerable people. And we help the physical transfer of these individuals to the mainland where they'll be allowed to continue their asylum application. Does that mean that the process is functioning? Not fully. Actually, probably not anywhere close to fully, because there are individuals that are leaving that have arrived more recently than others that have been in Moria for, in some cases, weeks or months, with the same vulnerabilities. Then you have to also consider what vulnerabilities should be given priority. Obviously, urgent medical cases should be given priority. These are standards that the authorities apply. So, to the question, who's more of a refugee? No one should be more or less. All nationalities should be treated with the same principles and the same criteria. But in the present urgent situation, the authorities have taken a decision to advance the transfer of those that are clearly vulnerable. And we are assisting as UNHCR, as the UN Refugee Agency, in the physical movement from the sites. When we receive the lists from the government, we don't make them up, we don't put people on the list. These are given to us, and we help them move. Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you very much. Two last comments. Rotten first, and then we have jokes. I'm sorry to say. Well, okay. Then it's Rotten, Emily, Stephen, and then Marius, and we are done.
Okay, Rotem Schneor from University of Agder. I'm a useless academician, but less useless because I'm from a business school. So we have some leg into reality. 3 observations. One is, I think what we're calling a refugee crisis is just a temporary peak in a natural process. There has always been refugees. There's always been traffic of migration throughout, and this is just a peak. And I think at the higher level, we should have better system for processing such situations. However, what this panel definitely showed is that all high-level authorities are failing miserably with this situation. And I think the local authorities should not wait for the EU or the UN or even the Greek bankrupt government to help. And I think this is what we need to do. If we're talking about Lesbos dialogues, we need to actually bring it down to Lesbos. And I think Effie has hit the point. It's about the basic daily things and not waiting for a savior. And what I would encourage to be practical is I think we need 3 things. One is resources. We need to understand what is needed. Second, we need to understand how much money do we need. And third is what type of skills do we need to develop. To understand what are the needs, I would encourage that some of these people here will establish some sort of a team that will basically sit and count. What do we need? How many blankets? How many tents? How many medical equipment? How many psychologist hours? how many, shoes, how many meals need to be provided in the next few years. This will have a price tag. And I'm just thinking, how much does it cost? 8,000 people we're talking about. What, $100, 100 euros per person? 500 euros per person? 1,000 euros per person? We're talking about small sums. What is this, 8 million euros? 8 million euros is nothing in the global market for donations, for do good, this is just the non-profit. But if you try to have some commercial aspects to it, selling products that the refugees can actually produce while they're here, not so that they can earn money, but the organizations that feed them can have more resources to give them more services, then I think, let's make that list. If we aim for, I don't know, 4 million, 10 million, it doesn't matter, it's a small sum, and with this type of network, we can raise this money, and we can see within 2 years or 3 years from now, very good progress, and we should stop waiting for angels from above, but just get the money, and it's not that much money. As a university, I would like to say we don't only do research, we also do education. So if we can help in training, educating, training the trainers, if we don't have the language skills to deal with these entrepreneurs, we would love to do that, and we are able to do that, and if we can put 1 + 1, I think there's many puzzle pieces around. We just need to put the puzzle together, and each one brings a capacity that can solve this island level issue. We shouldn't be too ambitious in solving all the immigration issue in Europe, but we can help Lesbos, and that's what we should aim for.
Yes, it will be very short. It is not so easy, I have to respond, because if you give now, in a minute, 1 million of euros, and all the stuff that you mentioned, it is impossible now to have 3 Morias more, to have a space to put these people. It's impossible. Local people don't want anymore. So it is not so easy as you describe it. And as I try to explain, there are conflicts between every solution. People that, as Effie says, people have to go from here because they have to ask them to go. Others say, no, they have to stay. Local people say, no, we don't want that they stay, and so on. It's not so easy. I'm stopping there.
Just to reverse. I would ask you really to contribute, making a research about how much costs to have people in these conditions in Moria. This I would like to know.
I want to direct a comment to Jalal. First, thank you for your wonderful talk. The one slide that you showed that made me the most hopeful was children sitting around in a circle on a football field. Maybe it's because of my biases in my field, but I believe that getting children out of the camp, integration can begin there. It doesn't require language mastery, but when children play, good things happen. And yes, food, yes, warmth, yes, clothing, but play is important for children. So I applaud that effort that you've made, and if we can contribute, if there are ways to allow children from the camps to play more, then let us help achieve that.
So I would like to compliment what Boris said. First of all, about the researchers. I do not agree that all researchers come and go, just take a photo, write the report and go. We have young students here, and we should encourage them by saying that your research matters. First of all, what creates fear? Fear is created by the unknown. And how we begin a research? By a huge, large question mark. So you are here to provide us the answers. So researchers matter. And I would like to acknowledge the presence of Stavros Myrogiannis. He's a friend and the site manager. So just a day ago, he received yet another researcher. So I'm sending piles of researchers in Karatepe. They all are received by municipality staff. We explain what we do, and I ask them, please send me back the outcome of your research. So research matters. It just takes time. We know how hard it is, but make no mistake, being academics and doing research, you are doing it in the service of the people. This is why it matters. Academics are in service of the people. It's a public service. And we have to gain a lot by researchers, by the Refugee Observatory from the University of the Aegean. By this dialogue, we have to gain a lot. So research matters. If we engage again in a vicious cycle of blame shifting and the blame game, who is responsible for what, who has the money? First of all, I'm sorry, but managing a crisis is not a shopping list. No disrespect, but it's far more than that. If we went to Brussels and they said, the commissioner has been saying that it's not a matter of resources and money. We have funded 300 million euros to NGOs, 700 million to the Greek state. So it's channeling that funding and reaching the beneficiaries. This is very important. And we don't need a savior. We need coordination, and coordination should be done by the central government. So we have been saying as a municipality, if you ask me, we are not responsible for anything. Did we sit down and just point fingers to anybody? No, we have been to representing the authorities in local coordination meetings. I've been patiently responding to questions about what is the ministry doing in Moria, why we are not ready for the winterization, even though the municipality is not, it's far beyond its mandate to manage a crisis. So let's not be in the vicious circle of this blame game. And if we accept that there is a responsibility to be taken, and it's there, and we should take it. Do whatever we can, and this is the mindset behind Lesbos dialogues. Doing whatever we can. If you are a researcher, do research. Stay there for hours upon hours, do research, and give the answers that we need. How are we going to surpass the funding problem? How are we going to surpass the bureaucracy? How are we going to surpass the obstacle of the complexity of this matter? So everything matters in this crisis. We are not all born an activist or a volunteer. There are people that are capable of doing that, but we are obviously capable of contributing from our own posts. Thank you.
Sorry, just one thing I would like to say. You're a representative of municipalities there, correct? I very much respect what you said, that we must contribute. And every morning when I go to work, I see scenes like members of the municipality going and tearing apart the banners that the people on Sappho Square have put. I'm sorry to say this is not contributing. This is, I would describe as a very hostile gesture of the people who represent the people of Mytilene. And I think it's good to say we shouldn't point fingers, but they should come first from the person who points the finger and say, you are not allowed to be in this public space and protest. So just be a little more consistent.
I'm sorry to say there are some rules on that. I'm sorry to say, if I may, Marius, there are some rules on how to demonstrate. I'm sorry. And this may be turned over saying that, think about the locals.
No, I'm
Think
not
about
saying
the
that.
locals.
I'm saying that in the morning, I would understand. I very much heard what, sorry, I forget, Christos said, and I totally agree. You can ask that, but you can't go with violence and just tear apart things and kick away women and children because nobody is looking.
Well, that's another thing.
This is what I mean.
Totally different thing.
It is 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30, no one is there. And they try to clean up the thing, which I would understand if you go and say, hey, I have a problem here. Come and let's discuss. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. But I can't hear these things that we try to do things. If people try to do things, then they should try harder. Because the message goes to all people. And I'm very sorry that half of this today was in English. And the people who are supposed to care about their city and feel fear and anxiety are not here to have a dialogue and give together answers. We know it's not easy. But if you don't start talking and just point fingers, nothing will be solved. I just want to say that. Sorry that I popped in at the end of the discussion.
Well, it's a discussion and it's a dialogue, so thank you for doing so.
Wow.
Thank you for doing so. So, if we have any other comment, then... Okay, a last one. You know...
The last, but for me it will be. You hear me? Okay. My question is, I'm a bit practical, and I believe in education, and I think that the tool of teaching those people some skills, I don't know if there are programs of you teaching those people as long as they're staying here, and what is the contribution of the local people in these programs, which would help in the integration and to know each other better. I'm talking about programs which teach to the refugees or migrants the language or skills and, which can be helpful for their life later.
I think that now we are entering the discussion of tomorrow evening, because tomorrow evening we have a session on mobile learning, and I am sure that questions on analog teaching and learning will come up as well. So you're heartily welcome tomorrow. I would like to thank you all. I would like to especially thank Katya, who has been, I know how difficult it is. Katya, thank you very much. We are deeply thankful. And I have to thank an invisible hero, who is Fotis, the young technician of the theater, who has been here for long hours supporting us. And he is still here long over his working hours. Foti, thank you very much. Thank you all. I hope that we will see you tomorrow as well. Tomorrow I can promise it will be much more structured, because the subjects are different, and I happen to have spoken to all the contributors tomorrow, so I know that we will follow the program tomorrow, so we will not torture you the way we have done today. Thank you deeply. I would like to ask the participants to stay with me, because we have a dinner to attend. Thank you all. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for being here. See you tomorrow.